the family of the Labour Party is, we will be there. So I will, in the interest of time, I will sit down and shut up, as some say in politics, and I will turn the mic over to Mr. Ralph Thorne, because you are eagerly awaiting the Attorney General as he speaks to you on many hot topics, and to give you a 6-month review of what has happened from his capacity within the Barbados Labour Party and Barbados on a whole. Mr. Thorne, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, President. And good evening to Christchurch South. Good evening. And good evening to the visitors to Christchurch South. And a special, oh, he went outside. A special good evening to the principal of Christchurch South. No, he is the principal of Christchurch South. He isn't assigned to any one school now. This was his school. And I am saying to you, in the present text, this is his school. Okay, right. The principal of Christchurch South. As I said, we want to welcome also, we always give a special welcome to those who don't live in Christchurch South, but who visit with us. I suspect there's something very special about our meetings. And we have a very special guest this evening. I have been given the task of introducing him. I think he is numbered among those people who likes to describe the Barbados Labour Party as his family. And he is well qualified to do that and to speak of family, because he is himself a family man. I believe he's the husband of a wife, the loyal husband of a wife. The husband is a boy. I would like to ask the guest speaker not to interrupt me. And I'm going to repeat. He is the loyal husband of a wife, and he's the good father of children. Before you this evening is a man who is well steeped in the good old Barbadian values, and how good it is that he finds himself once again in the office of Attorney General. You may or may not have noticed that when he came, we were in the middle of a prayer. And as a good Christian, he paused at the door and waited until the prayer was finished. And we are not surprised that he did that, because apart from being a husband, he is the son of a pastor. Is he smiling? Is he blushing? Good. And Dale Marshall comes to public life, and he comes to the office of Attorney General with a strong sense of values. And if we are to tackle the problem of crime and violence in this country, we do need someone with Dale's background. We do need someone with Dale's orientation. He has succeeded in the past in this post, and we are absolutely confident that he will succeed again. The challenges this time are greater. I want to say to Dale, my friend, and to remind Dale that what happened in January has happened before, and that every time it happens, we behave as if there's fresh alarm, as if it has never happened before. But it is no less important that this government and his ministry should give Barbadians some confidence that the government is able to deal with this problem. And with that vote of confidence, it is my absolute pleasure to present to you a husband, his wife's husband, that is, and the pastor's son. You know him as the Attorney General, but I know him as the pastor's son. So I want you to welcome the pastor's son this afternoon. Thank you very much.
That'll be a tough one. Ordinarily, you would thank the person introducing you for the introduction. If I never come back to Christchurch, so it is because I don't want Ralph Thorne ever to introduce me as anything again. Comrades, ladies and gentlemen, I had planned to be here to speak for a long time.
Please do.
But now that you forced me to hold the microphone, I have to stop when my hand gets tired.
I'll hold it for you.
I don't want Ralph holding anything for me. But I'm really pleased to be here. I recollect being here at the start of Ralph's, not his political journey. I recollect being here at the start of his successful political journey. When on the night of his nomination, Dame Stella St. John, I think,
Yes, correct.
nominated him to the candidacy that Ralph came to grapple with successfully, and therefore succeeded her husband, not immediately succeeded her husband, but came to succeed her husband, the late Sir Harold St. John. And so far, based on all that I see on Facebook and all the compliments that Ralph has been getting, I'm happy to say that he's doing a marvelous job. And I'd like to commend him for that work, to thank him for that work, precisely because the nature of Ralph's engagement with the young men and women of this constituency dovetails very nicely with what you have asked me to speak with you about tonight. I've been asked to speak about the crime situation. It is topical, it is front of mind, sells a lot of newspapers, and it is a source of much political fodder. The UPP, who we haven't heard from since election, started in January in the response to the upsurge in violence to throw pot shots at the Barbados Labour Party. The Democratic Labour Party that has said nothing at all about crime in the decade that they run this country have now all of a sudden gained a voice, so they're throwing their pot shots as well. And then there are people who are naysayers and pull-downgers and so on, and they're also getting in on the act. It doesn't faze me. Everybody in Barbados has a right, and in fact they have a duty to speak out on the important issues that are affecting our nation. We just have to wonder why you weren't hearing the voices before. Well, we could spend a lot of time placing blame on the last administration. I think they deserve to be blamed. I think that when the scourge of gun violence started to rear its head, instead of stamping it out and doing something about it, they did absolutely nothing about it. And they have the gall now to complain that guns are being fired daily in our streets. And they had the opportunity to nip it in the bud then. I will share a few things with you. I suppose I have to use my judgment as to what I put in the public domain. But when I tell you that the Democratic Labour Party, and I'm not here to talk about them tonight, but I just want to make this one point, maybe 2 points, on their stewardship. We know that guns come in large measure through the port. We know that. The Democratic Labour Party presided over an administration that saw the scanning ability of the Customs Department reduced to a barest minimum, so that for much of the last decade, less than 6% of all containers passing through the port are scanned. And at one point in time, in the year 2017, the only scanner that was then working was out for 2 months. So for 2 months, there was no scanner in the port working. So you can only imagine what an opportunity that would have been for people who want to get guns and so on into Barbados. It would have been open season. So they had an opportunity and a duty to nip these things in the bud, and they didn't. But that's all right, because our great party has been known for stepping in and putting things right. And the Prime Minister has given me the responsibility now to add the police to my portfolio, and I am prepared and ready to do all that I have to do to make it right. Now, when we talk about crime, we have to recognize that crime doesn't exist in a vacuum. You don't wake up one day and be a criminal, you know. Nobody is born a criminal. Nobody is born a criminal. You become a criminal. Sometimes you start out on a road, not planning to get there, you end up there. Other times, by process of some sort of socialization, you end up in that route. But the point is, crime and criminal activity is part of a continuum. There's something somewhere along the line in the beginning that started it. So when we talk about the crime situation, and I'm prepared and I'm here to talk about the crime situation, but I want to say to you that the discussion can't start and end there. We can't begin and end the discussion talking about how many murders there are, how many murders there have been, how many people are on bail, how many people are not on bail. All of those are important factors. But as a political party and a government, we have to make sure that we engage in a discussion that seeks to eliminate the scourge of crime. So I see my good friend, the public health inspector here, retired. Now, you don't start out by talking about disease. The disease is what happens when conditions are allowed to prevail. Am I not correct? So in his job, Comrade Colin, while it was his responsibility to look at various things, he also understood that he had to consider the conditions that allowed the mosquito to breed, or that allowed the particular disease or illness to manifest itself. So we can talk about crime, but it is not going to be a useful discussion unless we are prepared to go back into the trenches and root out those things that result in the criminal activity. Plain and simple. And then we have to talk about a few things after. We got to talk about whether Dodge is serving its proper purpose. So I'm here to talk about crime, and we will talk about it. But just remember, that's just one element of an entire progression. Now, let's remember that in any society where crime becomes pervasive, your economy is going to suffer. Plain and simple. And you know why the recent upsurge is especially troublesome for us? Because upon winning the election on the 24th of May last year, we spent day and night wrestling our country's economic affairs back into some kind of order. But an upsurge in criminal activity can eliminate all of the gains that we have made. We are trying to make sure that our tourism contributes to the economy in the way that we expect it to, in the way we want it to. But just imagine if you were about to take a trip to some idyllic holiday location, and all of a sudden, as you were about to finalize your plans, you heard that there were 9 murders in the space of a few days, you may say, no, boy, that ain't the place for me to go. That's not the place for me to go. And it therefore means that people are going to be looking at Barbados with those same eyes. And I'm horrified that we have had to deal with 9 murders in the space of less than 30 days. Then people will still be coming off of the wonderful feeling of love and giving and friendship that comes in the period after Christmas. But we have to deal with it. But I'll say this. For those people who want to scream and shout that the Barbados Labour Party, Dale Marshall in particular, was always on about crime and shootings and so on, and look at what happened now. Look at what happened now that he's in charge of the police. Because they say so, you know. But it doesn't bother me. Because as Ralph said, we have had situations like this before. And we have had 9 in a few days between the 8th of January and the 29th of January. But in July and August of 2017, 6 weeks between July and August 2017, we had 13 murders. 13. Now, it doesn't matter when we have it. It doesn't even matter who was in government when we have it. The problem is that when our societies are burdened by this kind of criminal activity, you know what happens? It paralyzes people, you know. I looked at a family led by a mother, headed by a mother, in Eden Lodge, when it was doing the walkthrough with the police. And she said to me, Mr. Marshall, as 6 o'clock come and my last child in the house, that front door shut. None of you going back out till tomorrow morning. Now what does that mean for a community? That kills a community. A community grows and survives and thrives, Ralph, when people interact. As a little boy, I remember when we first got our street light in St. George. I know that Hashim, remember them days, right? When the community got its first street light. Huh? And all of a sudden, you know, everybody gathers, there's a gathering place. But the street light only on at night. So it means that at 7, 8 o'clock, and 8 o'clock at night, you're outside, and you're talking, little children running around, until it was time to go in your bed. But the point is that communities, people have to interact. Whether it is going to church, going to shop, sitting on the step and talking to the neighbor, walking across for some reason or another. But when you shut your door at 6 o'clock and are mortified about going back outside, then that community is going to die, because the interaction that helps to build social cohesion is gone. Okay? So when our communities have to contend with these kinds of things, then we know that we're going in a direction that it's not just economically burdensome, it is also burdensome for our societies. Now, all of our gains, if we don't wrestle this crime situation to the ground, as I said, stand to be wiped out. What is our response? Immediately, the response of the Barbados Labour Party administration, my response as Attorney General, was to put additional boots on the ground. Now, I read some, I don't like to be disrespectful, so I won't call it foolishness. Somebody, I think it was the Democratic Labour Party, said that I have unleashed the Barbados Defence Force on the people of this country. I don't, you know, that created such a horrible picture. But you know what? Those communities that the BDF stepped up, the BDF joined with the Royal Barbados Police Force and stepped up their patrols, all of a sudden, they had a little breath of fresh air. So if that is what unleashing does, well, we can unleash some more. Plain and simple. The person also wrote that we only use the BDF at crop over. That's total nonsense. The BDF is deployed with the police force all year round. But because of what was happening in our inner city community of Chapman Lane and New Orleans, because that kind of violence had started to penetrate other areas, because we've been seeing increase in firearm activity in Silver Hill and Britain's and a whole set of other places, we considered it important to strengthen the police force troops on the ground. And we asked the BDF to put an additional 80 people at the disposal of the police force. And of course, it don't make sense sending people unless you send vehicles, so the BDF supplied us with 20 vehicles. Now let me say this. I can see no good sense in supporting the Barbados Defense Force to the tune of about, well, I don't remember the exact figure, probably about $40 million a year. And then the country needs a full tactical response team that we play timid and say we don't want to bring out the BDF, we're reserving it for crop over. Well, that is not what I am about. And I stand by our decision, and I'm happy to say that those combined patrols, having been strengthened, demonstrate to the criminal element in this country that we are serious about rooting it out. Communities feel more comfortable. In fact, I had a meeting just last week. The hoteliers in Lawrence Gap have asked, not through formal channels, but in our meeting they have said, Mr. Marshall, do you think you could arrange to have some BDF soldiers deployed in St. Lawrence Gap to help to make our tourists feel a little more comfortable? Because if any of you follow what's happening in St. Lawrence Gap, you might be aware that people are selling drugs on the beach and they're pulling out guns and shooting and all kind of things. Robbing. And the hoteliers are saying, look, we just want our guests to feel safe. And while Barbados is a tourism economy, I have to say, with due respect to my friend Kerry, I want you to feel safe. I want to feel safe myself. And when you and I feel safe, then the tourists will feel safe too. Tourists will feel safe too. So, whatever impact having the BDF and the police patrols increased in the way in which they've been increased, it could only be described as being positive. Now, those murders that happened so far for the year, 9 murders. And don't forget that when we talk about crime, we tend to focus on the homicides. But there have been burglaries, there might have been break-ins, robberies, or a whole set of other criminal activity, okay? But everybody wants to focus on the murders, so let's focus on those. 9. Ralph does this in Parliament every single week. Every single week. I don't know if he can't see me when I stand up and talk. So he go look at it on the phone.
That's a urinal.
So of the 9 murders that happened, the first one happened for the year on January 8th, and the last one was January 29th. Of the 9 murders, 4 were by firearm. 4 were by firearm. Of the 5 that were not by firearm, 1 was with a rock, and 4 were with the use of knives. I think everyone knows about the incident at the senior citizens home. And everyone would also know that was an elderly man. And then you would know that the last one for the year was with the 15-year-old, where the 15-year-old boy was charged with a stabbing death. Of that other 5, the non-related firearms, a young man has been charged for 2 of them. Those are the 2 ladies whose remains were found in St. Lucie. So when we look, well, he was charged with another one, but that's not one for this year, so I didn't include it. I'm talking about the 9 that we have for this year. So when we look at these 9 homicides, you can begin to form the impression that of the 9, the 5 that were as a result of firearm are not likely to be, as we say, gang-related. Okay? The investigations also reveal that of the 4 by firearm, 2 of them might not have been gang-related. Firearms is perhaps our biggest problem in Barbados today. You see, the reason firearms, you can ban knives. People cook. People cut coconuts. You can't ban knives. You need a knife for day-to-day existence. But you don't need a gun. You don't need a gun. And I'm sure that you would remember that years ago, perhaps as recently as 10, 15 years ago, the newspaper would report that so-and-so was charged with possession of a firearm, and you would hear how he had a gun and 2 bullets. But that was the feature then. A gun and 2 bullets. A gun and 1 bullet. And it was almost laughable because you say if you can't shoot good, you miss. That's the kind of sport that as young lawyers, Ralph, we would say, no, what do you want with 1 bullet for? If he missed, we can hit the man with the gun. Those were the things that we would talk about at the bar table. But we can't make those jokes anymore. I disclosed to the press at the launch of a recent anti-violence music video by a fellow named Joe Cloudy, brilliant young man, but that's a story for another day. I disclosed to the press that in a street that probably stretches from here where I'm standing to the fence, from here to the fence, the police were able to recover in a single night over 100 spent shells. So we've gone from arresting a man on a bicycle with a gun and 3 bullets to a criminal element that not only has firearms, and in some instances firearms that may well be more powerful than the legitimate firearm holders, but that they can afford to use over 100 shells in one place in one night. Is it any wonder that those communities feel paralyzed? As I've been speaking to Barbadians in places like Eden Lodge, they tell me that they hear the quiet of the night erupted with barrages of gunshots, not a single pack, but barrages of gunshots as if they're coming from machine guns. Let me welcome our cabinet colleague, the Honorable Sandra Husbands. Thanks for coming this far, Sandra. So, but that tells us something else about a barrage of gunshots. It tells us about the nature of firearm that is being used. And so among the seizures of firearms that have been taking place of late, the police have been finding AK-47s. That is a gun that they're using out in Syria. That is a gun that is being used in war zones. But there are young men in Barbados who have access to AK-47s. Now, I'm not here to frighten you, not at all. And what I'm telling you is public knowledge because it's been reported in the press. But by reiterating it now, I hope I'm helping you to understand perhaps the magnitude of the challenge ahead of us. Now, we simply have to get these guns off of the streets. Plain and simple. We have also to stop them from coming in. Those are our two tasks. The police are going to be the ones responsible for getting them off of the streets. But it is our customs department that has to be responsible for stopping them from coming in. Whether they're coming through the airport, whether they're coming through the post office, whether they're coming through the seaport. That is the customs job. Now, as an aside, I shudder to think what would have happened if the customs department had been moved effectively from doing their normal job into the BRA. Because we've always said that the BRA is a taxing agency. While in every country in the world, customs is about border protection. Customs may collect some taxes, you know, and they certainly do. But the most important thing for most countries is that taxes serve, the customs department serves as a guardian of your gate to make sure that unwanted things do not make their way in. So we stood up and said no, and with good reason. With good reason. Now I can tell you that as part of our responses, the Prime Minister is making the funds available so that the port can buy additional scanners. So within the next few months, the port will have an additional 2 scanners. And the figure I gave you earlier, about 6% of the containers being scanned, no more. No more. Now the truth is you can't scan every container. Customs doesn't search every suitcase that comes through the airport. And in many respects, a lot of these things are intelligence driven. But the fact is that we need to scan, we need to subject for examination a significantly greater percentage of containers than we currently do if we are going to be successful at seizing some of these metals. We have to. So when they talk about our responses, our first response has been to put additional boots on the ground to reassure Barbadians, to dampen that activity, and to remove the paralysis. Our next response has been to make resources available to the agencies where it is needed in a strategic way. Now those additional scanners are going to make a world of difference. Now, you know, there's a lot of talk about who bringing in guns and so on. Everybody said, you know, everybody seems to know somebody who bringing in guns. We do know that there are connections with the business community. And I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. No, the same way that none of you can feel safe as long as these guns are on the street, I want to make it clear that any member of the business community who either allows or facilitates his shipments to be used as a method of getting guns into Barbados, he will not be safe from the law enforcement authorities either. It must always be, we talk about equality under the law, and I'm a firm believer in it. And the same way the police is going to have to knock on house doors and search people's cars and those kind of things, the business community will have to feel some of the way if they are involved in this. There will be no sacred cows in this exercise. Not one. But there are other responses, and the police force features highly in this. But before I get to that, let me share with you something that I consider to be important. In our last administration, the Barbados Labour Party, our mantra used to be face it and fix it. Face it and fix it. And by that, our then leader meant that we had to acknowledge where there's a problem and don't acknowledge it secretly. Acknowledge it publicly. Barbados belongs to all of us. So we have to acknowledge it publicly, and then we have to put things in place to get rid of the problem. Now I believe that the last administration pulled the wool over their eyes. They refused to admit that we were having a problem with guns. Their Prime Minister, or Prime Minister at the time, the Honorable Fernando Stewart, said, well, buses still running and people in St. Joe still getting water, so everything is all right in Barbados, there's nothing to worry about. That was the tune they sang. On Kadooman Day of 2017, you all remember the shootout down Spring Garden, and the Attorney General at the time could not be found, and when he was found, he said that one of his cell phones weren't working. So he couldn't address the issue. We believe in facing it and fixing it. But no one parliamentarian has all the answers. I'm not a trained criminologist. I'm not a trained criminologist. I've never been a policeman, never been involved in law enforcement. But my job as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs is to ensure that I manage the resources that I have to bring about a positive result. But in order to be able to manage resources, you need to know what those resources are to begin with. We sought the assistance and advice of all three former commissioners of police, and we invited all three former commissioners of police, Mr. Dottin, Mr. Durant, and Mr. Watson. We invited them to come and join with us. Now, the gun situation at the time when Mr. Durant was commissioner isn't the same as it is now. Our communities might have been different. But you know what? We understood that these things had their roots back then. And therefore it was important for us to bring all of these policing minds together and say to them, we have a problem. And we want you to join in the effort in bringing it back together. Every single profession in the world does that. Ralph is a brilliant Queen's Counsel. But there are times when Ralph will have a case and he might call on Sir David Simmons. He may call on somebody who in other people's minds may have been put out to pasture, may have retired, because there is something in those persons' experiences that can help to make what Ralph has to do a little more comprehensive, a little better. A young surgeon will seek the experience of an older surgeon. For heaven's sake, Sandra, we seek the experience of the older politicians every day. Every day. So why should it be so odd, so offensive, that we could say to former commissioners of police, you have been there, come and give us a hand. Now let me make this clear. We have not asked any of them to assist the current Commissioner of Police. Mr. Griffith does not need their help. Mr. Griffith is an excellent Commissioner of Police. But as a government, we need the help of those people who have gone before. So we reached out to these three former commissioners of police and we said to them, look, we want you to assist this administration, not assist Commissioner Griffith. We want you to assist this administration in helping to craft creative policies on policing and creative policies to help to take us out. That's what we asked them to do. And I have asked and I have obtained the permission of the Prime Minister that I should be able to engage former Commissioner Darwin Dottin as a consultant to me, not Commissioner Griffith, but as a consultant to me, the Attorney General, so that I will be better able to discharge my obligations to the people of Barbados and to the Cabinet of Barbados in the management of those resources. And it is a decision that I stand by. But you know, the Dems, the eternal detractors, They didn't tired of pulling down Mr. Dottin when he was commissioner. They're still trying to pull him down now. I received a letter which I gave to the press last week. I'm not into cloak and dagger stuff. It didn't fall off the truck. I gave it to the press. Me. I gave it to the press. Because I felt it was important that the country know that the case that was brought against Mr. Dottin was specious, had no chance of success. And more than likely, in fact, I'm almost sure that it was motivated for political reasons. You know, I was Attorney General for part of the time. Well, part of the time I was AG. Commissioner Dottin was in charge of the force. And I never once pick up the phone and ask Mr. Dottin to promote X or to promote Y or to let go of this body or to let go of that body. I didn't do it. I leave you to figure out who may have done it. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen before 2008, and it ain't happened since May 24th, 2018. But when you decide that you're going to run a police force into the ground for partisan political purposes, and you want to pick out so and so and promote them, and pick out so and so and promote them, you know, that's when chaos starts. And if I seem to be rambling, it's only that this has come to mind, and perhaps it's important that I mention it now. Now, can you imagine, and it bears repeating, that under the Democratic Labour Party, they could find it appropriate to countermand the wishes of a commissioner of police who has day-to-day responsibility for managing the force, and in one instance, accept the promotion recommendations of a deputy commissioner, and in another, impose their idea of who should be promoted on the force. Well, let's work through it. It ain't rocket science. A commissioner of police has responsibility for the day-to-day management of the force. Plain and simple. And as part of that day-to-day management of the force, he would have formed a view as to who the good producers are, who should be promoted, what is the long-term strategy of the force. Should I promote a younger person so that in 10 years' time we got somebody there, or should I promote an older person? All those are decisions for the Commissioner of Police. Mr. Dottin, Commissioner Dottin, submitted his recommendations for promotion and went on holiday. When he comes back, he discovers that the Police Service Commission, even though his recommendations had been received by them, they decided to ask the Deputy Commissioner, who you recommend? Have you heard anything? Have you ever heard anything so absurd? The boss makes his recommendations in writing and goes on vacation, and they want to ask the boss deputy, who you recommend? And then they took the recommendations of the boss deputy. You know, this reminds me, well, Ralph did say that I'm the son of a pastor. And I followed your advice yesterday. Ralph told me my dad is getting old now, and you know, so he told me I need to spend some more time with him. I took them driving around yesterday. You know, I think there was something about giving people talents, and then the Lord, when he come back, he had to ask, what will you do? What will you do? What will he give you? And the Police Service Commissioner would have told Dottin, we threw them away. Because Mr. Dottin would have come back and said, what do you do with the recommendations that I give you? And they say, well, sir, we didn't frighten them, we buried them in the ground. But that's what they did to a police force. And the current commissioner made recommendations for promotions some time back, and they ignored him and promoted who they felt should have been promoted, as if they were around the force. And that's the kind of administration, well, that's the kind of activity that passed for administration in this country. I can assure the police, and whether the press read it or not, there will be no political interference in the management of the Royal Barbados Police Force. I stood against it from the beginning. I told Frondell Short and I told Edward Braffett, if you want to play politics with one of the statutory corporations, man, go along. Don't play politics with the force. When a policeman shows up at a crime scene, he does not ask anybody, who did you vote for? When somebody breaking at your house, Sandra, do you call the police and say, I want you to send a policeman who is a B? You say, police, come quick. Nobody asks. When violence erupts in the city, nobody asks whether the district vote for Jeffrey Bostick or not. We need to leave politics out of the force, and it will be out of the force. And let me say this, I mean no disrespect. But there are also people who are BLP people who, having seen how the Dems ran the force, and it's not just the force, it is Child Care Board, it is NHC, it is NCC, it is the Sports Council, BNOC, every place. Central government. There are people who are Barbados Labour Party supporters. A shift from Colonel Bit, Ralph, forgive me. But you know what? They now feel, well, it's our turn. It's our turn. The Dems get promoted into the government, so I should get promoted now, because I run out to your son. I run out behind you, Mr. Marshall. I run out behind you, Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Husbands. So it's our turn now. I'm sorry. When we won the election on the 24th of May, it represented a complete transformation of how things are done in this country. Do not call Mrs. Husbands and say, is the BLP turn now? Bad government is bad government, whether it's under the B's or under the D's. Every man is entitled to his due, and if you're entitled to be promoted, then the system should promote you. But please do not come running saying that Mr. Marshall, the Dems promote them people, so what are you going to do now? That's not how. When I say no political involvement, I mean no political involvement. Plain and simple. So who hate me for that? They have to hate me. Because we cannot continue bad practices and hope to get a good result. Plain and simple. And that is what I stand for. As I am on the back of the police, I was going to talk about them a little later on, but I could as well stay in that train for the moment. No. It is a fact that we have challenges recruiting our young men and women to the force. There was a time, not a generation past, probably about 3 generations past, when the careers of choice were police, teacher, priest, civil servant. There were times when a policeman was well respected in the district, and it was seen as an avenue to progress, and the people, you know what I'm talking about. This isn't alien to you. And in those days, you could attract people to the force. But today we find that we cannot attract people to the force in the numbers that we used to. The regional police training school, the current intake of police recruits, I'm not going to ask you to guess, because you can guess. Call a number.
15.
18. 18 recruits at our police training school. 18 recruits. Now what does that tell you about the long-term viability of the police force in terms of maintaining the strength that it needs? Now, we've given instructions to the management that they need. Now, this is the difference between giving instructions to do certain things and getting involved. We don't tell them how to do it. But we've given them instructions that they need to step up their recruitment drive. Plain and simple. They need to step up their recruitment drive. We simply need to have more recruits coming into the force because you need to have that continuity. But when you only get 18, I remember when it was last Attorney General, I believe one of the classes around that time probably had about 40 or 50 recruits. And there would have been times when you had 100 and 120 recruits, but now only 18. So we now have to start thinking about ways and means of getting our young men and women interested in the police force as a career. But that is a long-term program. We're not going to create a desire in our young men and women to become police officers overnight. And everybody wants to talk about higher salaries, but that is a challenge for us as well. So we now have to think about how we use best the resources that we have. There are a number of departments that are staffed by police officers. And we recognize that there's no good reason, take police certificate of character for example. There's no good reason why a police officer has to issue a police certificate of character. In Canada, it is done by public servants. Just checking the record. In a sense, it's like going to public library and asking, do I have any books outstanding? You just check the computer and you give the information. That's all. So when the person says, do I have any criminal charges? You just check the computer and you give the results. But our police certificate of character office is staffed by police officers. Now, there are too many things that we have accepted as the norm, and May 24th represented, that is the time after which things changing. Because I cannot be complaining that we do not have enough policemen on the ground when they got half a dozen or a dozen in the office processing requests. You remember when police used to do driving tests? And they used to issue passports. That was then. But we recognized that there wasn't anything about a driver's license that a policeman had to do. There was nothing about a passport that a policeman should do. There's nothing about a police certificate of character that a police officer has to do. Plain and simple. So by changing those processes, we can put more policemen and women there to do their policing activity. You all across the force, you have police officers in jobs that civilians could be doing. Now there are some sensitive matters that you would not put a civilian to do, but those are few. But we pledge that in every case, in every instance where a civilian could do that job, over time, we're going to put civilians in those roles and release police officers to do policing. But in addition to that, Anstey, we also have to start using technology I don't even think it's creative, in obvious ways. Have any of you ever had to give a police a statement? Well, a little painful now. And time consuming now. But it's time consuming for him too. The police officer who has to sit down and hear you because they tell you, do you want to write your statement yourself or shall I write it? And most times you can say, man, you write it. So he then got to sit down. If you like me, I could barely write. I used to be able to form legible letters, but now I write in such a hurry. You know, I could say, look back at it, I ain't even sure what it is I wrote. But that police officer now has to write, because it is now a permanent record that every judge, every magistrate got to. So he has to write in his best hand, my name is Anstey Greenwich. How do you spell Anstey? A-N-S-T-E-Y, Greenwich. And I live at. And he has to go through this process from, you take the same police officer in the world who won't do that job. But today, people are capturing entire incidents on the mobile phone. Now, other than the fact that the ladies might not want to go on camera without makeup, is there any good reason why I should not be able to, if I were a policeman, to go on the scene of a crime and put my phone up and say, Mr. Greenwich, can you tell me what happened, please? And Steve will tell me exactly the same thing there and then as he will tell me when we go back to the station. And it is only if, in my view, this is how I'd like to see it proceed. It is only if a prosecution is going to go ahead, then somebody can sit down and type it up. But every single statement, they have to give by hand. Now we feel that by using technology, we can eliminate not just some of the drudgery of some of those duties, but we can also eliminate the time it takes.
Exactly.
And I know that there are some things that may seem a little controversial. Like, I don't know how you feel about it, and it isn't policy. So the press certainly can't say that their marshal announced. But I have begun a discussion with the members of the Royal, with the High Command Force, and I've asked, please look at the situation with traffic accidents. Do we need to dispatch 2 police officers to every single fender bender in this country? I am coming out of a car park, somebody bumps me, and we block up the whole car park so nobody can't come and go. Because the accidents always happen at the entrance, never down the back. Always at the entrance. And you know the old time thing? If you get an accident, don't move. Here's as foolish as, don't move. So you don't move. And you call the police. And the station sergeant says, well, we don't have anybody to send now because our people are out at another accident. At another accident. So everybody jam up, block off, block up, everything. I mean, is this really how we should best utilize our resources? I don't think so. There are countries in the world, in England, if you get in a traffic accident, police will only come if there's a fatality or serious injury. I certainly can't see that there's any disservice. I would prefer to know for myself as an individual and not as Attorney General now, if I have a break-in, I'd prefer the police to be able to come to my break-in quickly, as opposed to being outside trying to take measurements and all kind of thing. You know, by the time it hasn't happened, everybody got the phone anyway and videotaping everything. So the time has come for us to recognize that there are opportunities for us to change the ways in which we do things. And some of them are so obvious that you have to wonder, why didn't we do it before? Now we know that tomorrow Brassat is going to be hot. And they can say, so what happened if the man ain't got the license? There are always going to be issues. Always going to be issues. What happened if the car ain't insured? Yes, there will always be issues. But we have to ask ourselves, how many times do you have an accident that the person has no license or is not insured? But you know what? Government is a whole big circle. Because very soon, when the registration of vehicles goes electronic, it gives us the opportunity to get all them unlicensed vehicles off the road. Because when the vehicle drives by, the sensor will tell the police officers, because the plan is to have it mobile as well. So the police would be there, and his camera and computer would pick up everybody, and he would know, well, oops, caravan, they ain't got no insurance. Let me take you off the road. So when the system works well together, then the risk becomes less, and then we can release police officers in the areas that they need to be in. We also have to develop a different attitude towards things, you know. And again, I should be careful how I speak. But there are some things that concern me. We've had a policy in place of no tattoos because of the possibility that the tattoos can be indicators and identifiers of particular gang allegiances and so on. And so the BDF, the police, the prison, they all have a policy. Sometimes it's enforced, sometimes not. But they all have a policy of if you are trying to recruit and you have a tattoo, we can't take you in. And you know, maybe we need to get away from that, because I mean, if Ralph had a tattoo on his hand, I'm sure it'll be a big J for Jackie. Children would feature a little higher up, a little close to the heart. But you know, we have to rethink things like that. You know, then Prime Minister Motley was Attorney General. I don't remember what the height was, but there was a height restriction for policing. And she had to change it to make shorter people able to come into force. I see some fairly Ralph height now in force. 30 years ago, you can be a police. You can be an MP though. 30 years ago. But the point is, if you treat these things as fixed in stone, then you don't make changes when you need to. I remember going on an official visit to Trinidad, and there was a police officer saying to me, "It's really short on Ralph." Honestly, short on Ralph. We'll leave Ralph out alone. But the point is, Prime Minister Motley, when she was last Attorney General, had to lower the height to allow more people. We're now looking at the possibility of increasing the age, because the cutoff age now is 30. And look at Ann Steele. Ann Steele must be at least 58. And look more robust. I think but I'm joking, you know, but I think you're beginning to see what I'm saying. That maybe the time has come when we should begin to recognize, well, what is the magic age about, what is the magic about 30? There are some people under 30 who so unfit that you wouldn't even want them to try to ride a snow haul car. And there are some who are 33, 34, 35 who jogging on the highway. In fact, they get to town faster than us. So where does all this lead us? It all takes us to a place where we have to review how we police. We have to use technology more. And in order to increase that number from 18 to perhaps 80, we have to start thinking about the cutoff points that we have, whether it's age, whether it's tattoos, whatever it is, because we simply need to be able to attract more people. But with smart use of technology, it may well be that we might not. And I know the number that the police force needs, or has always historically had, and I'd like to see them get back there. But you know what? Most entities in the world function today with fewer people to do the same job than they had 10 years ago. Now you may say that IBM is a bad example, or that some of the major companies are bad examples, but they all, because of technology, they all use fewer people to do the same job. Now, technology can't replace a policeman when it comes to investigating, when it comes to security elements, but it can certainly help to make him more available for day-to-day policing, because it will allow him to do other duties. Now, I mentioned police certificate character. See that 7-week, 8-week horror that we have to deal with now? I am looking at 4-day turnaround. I wish that I could wave a magic wand and have it happen tomorrow. It can't. But we believe that we can do it in 4 days. Trinidad does it in 4 days. Other countries in the world can do it in 4 days. I understand the US is taking 2 months, but that's a US problem. But I believe that we can do it in 4 days. And right now, Parliament is going to be asked, I can't say right now Parliament is going to be asked, that my English teacher will get vexed. On Tuesday, Parliament is going to be asked to approve a supplementary so as to allow the police force to digitize its record. Now, part of the problem is that when you come and you say, my name is Dale Marshall, and you give the fingerprint, they go through the record and so on. But they have decades and decades of records there. And, you know, we need to have them on a digital database so that all of it is put in Dale Marshall name, put in the fingerprint, and everything comes up. And we also, because everything is connected, if I go to court today and get convicted, by the end of the day, the computer at Central must know that I got convicted today. Because what will happen is I will go and apply for a certificate of character knowing that the judge can give a decision next week. So let me get it this week, because at least this week, at least this week I get the another. And the certificate lasts for 6 months, 3 months. So let me go and get it this week. Okay. But, you know, so I'm committing to you, we're putting the resources into doing that. And again, what happens now is you're going to call and make an appointment. But the passport office gone past that. Gone past that. You fill the application on form online. So I've asked the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology to see if they can develop an app so that you can complete the form on your phone. Correct. The average age of a person who applies for certificate of character is probably 30-something. Somebody who is well versed with how to do this. So why go and sit down in front of a police officer? My name is Anstey Greenwich. Come on, do it online. And when you get there, you still have to give the fingerprint. When you get there, swipe your finger and off you go. Come back in 4 days. Now, you know, one of the things that I think politicians see it well, right? We notice it because we recognize how all of these things are connected. A young man who has to wait 7 weeks to get a police certificate of character, job gone. So he vexed. You know who you get vexed with? Well, not me. You get vexed, but me too. He get vexed with the police. He get vexed with the police. Because the police are not able to facilitate him achieving his dream. So you got another man or woman who vexed with the authorities and the police because of the way things are done. Now, I've been speaking now for a long time, so let me begin to come home. Our other responses have been openness. You know, we went through 10 years and the Democratic Labour Party and government refused to talk to the opposition about anything. We didn't want to hear nothing from you, country going to hell, but they didn't want to hear nothing from us. And that was how they operated for the last 10 years. When this explosion of gun violence and homicides took place, we immediately decided that we need to brief the opposition. Now let me tell you what that means. It might only be one person, and it might only have 2 senators in the Senate. But you know what? The opposition, it would have been so good if when they passed the amendments to the Policing Act, if they had called on us and said, we want to give you a brief, it would be limited. We want to let you know what's happening in the country. As far as they were concerned, the government only was them. DEM and THEM. Okay? It didn't involve anybody else. But whenever you are approaching a crisis state, whenever things are threatening to get out of hand, you have to brief your stakeholders. All parliamentarians were briefed. Now, it wasn't the same briefing that we would get in the National Security Council, because there are certain things that you would not disclose beyond that small circle. But it isn't fair for us to be dealing with these things, and you have people coming to Parliament or coming to the Senate every day, and these things are going around them, and as they go into the supermarket, they can't give an assurance that we're doing anything. Those things are wrong. So openness for us meant that we needed to brief every single parliamentarian, whether you were an independent senator, whether you were a government senator, an opposition senator, an opposition member. Every single parliamentarian benefited from a briefing on the crime situation in our country. But we also give a limited briefing to the social partnership. We give it to them too, because they are an important cog in the wheel, and they need to understand what's going on, because in part some of the decisions that have to be made will affect them too, whether it is in the unions, because we got to start polygraphing people, or because we got to put in more cameras in their workplaces, or whether it is in the businesses, because the businesses too got to understand, as I have said, there are no sacred cows. That is part of our response, talking to people. And we've also given a limited briefing to the head of all the social services, and I will spend 2 minutes on this and then land my light aircraft. Our most important response, remember when I began, I said that crime doesn't take place in isolation, it starts somewhere. Maybe it started in a young man's head 30 years ago because he was mistreated. He didn't have the right opportunities. You know, the police report us that they responded to an incident in St. Philip. And when you hear these things, they break your heart. 33 people living in a single 2-bedroom chattel house with no running water. 33 people. We probably got about 40 in here, 45. Ralph told me about 300, but we understand that he's saying so. Ralph saying so if he press. He wanted the press to report 300 persons from branch meeting. But can you imagine 33 adults and children living in a single household? And then we wonder why we have these problems. The young man who was charged with the 2 homicides was put out of school. He's 18 now. You notice I said who was charged. The jury will decide that he was guilty or not. But he was put out of school while still, well, a few years ago. I think he was probably 14 or 15. Okay? And then the stabbing a 15-year-old boy. The last administration spent no money on social services. The summer camps was about catering. And a $5 million budget, $3.5 million was spent on food. Yeah. They were interested in fattening up caterers instead of fattening the minds of our young people. Then I walked through Chapman Lane and New Orleans. There were areas full of bush, garbage in pickup, building materials yonder saw in a huge heap. And you ask yourself, how have we allowed such neglect and carelessness to be visited on these communities, but yet still on the other hand, we want to say to them that the life should be different. So, in briefing the social services, we've said to them, listen, we now need to have sustained interventions. We may not be able to save this current crop, but we got to make sure that we do our best to do so, and perhaps more importantly, ensure that down the line, 10 years down the line, young men and women who would so readily be going to stray now, that we get them back in this avenue, in the right avenue. Now, I cannot tell you how important this is. The government can spend every penny it got on roads, we can build highways, we can build sewage treatment plant, we can fix all of those things. But if we neglect the things that are social care, then we will not have served a purpose as a government. Plain and simple. So we've asked all of our social care agencies to come back to us with a plan in 2 weeks. A plan in 2 weeks. And I know myself and Prime Minister, we don't want here, we keep a basketball tournament. That is a 6-week something. Leave that for me and Ralph to do. That's right. We do it. But the point is, we have to, our social care ministries, they're the ones that have to use government resources. It is allocated to them. We have to use government resources to try to make sure that a sustained developmental plan is put in place. Richard Carter, who used to head our, I don't know what the agency was called, Youth Affairs Division. I heard him say what was one of the most profound things I've heard in years. It is easier to bend a young boy than to break a man. Easier to bend a boy than to break a man. So all of those government departments have been given an instruction and a challenge by us in cabinet and in government that they have to come back to us with interventionist strategies. And quite frankly, I don't want to see the law reports. People, they got more reports than you can shake a stick at. But we want to see government's resources being deployed to clean up our communities, because we can't expect discipline and order if everywhere people look garbage and bush and the place like a dump heap. If you live in disorder, your behavior will be disorderly. Well, that's probably not a good rule, because I shouldn't speak in those terms, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It isn't that it's a rule, but that is, you can't expect a lot that's different. So we have to ensure that government's resources, as long as Ryan Straughn agrees, because you know we call him the cheapest man in Christendom. Don't like to spend money on nothing at all, boy, right, Sandra? Can't get a penny out of here unless it's raw. But in this cause, I think we can be assured of his support and commitment, because the resources are there, and government agencies have to help to bring our communities back together. That's right. You know, I had something in St. Joseph the last bank holiday, and my branch organized it, and they came and said to me, Mr. Marshall, we need $425. I said, for what? To pay the Sports Council. I said, for what? To be able to use the pavilion. Now let us sink in for a minute. We want to tell our young people, get engaged in wholesome activity. We want community groups to do events. Ralph wants to sponsor this so that we get our young people involved in positive, proactive activity. But before you can do the first thing, you got to pay Sports Council $425. Then you're going to look for $200 insurance. And then along the way, you got to get cost cap $120. Yes. And you have not been able to do a single thing yet. So, you know, our facilities, more than ever, have to be put back in the hands of people so that they can use them free of cost, because that is the reason they were built in the first place. And Ralph was saved for $425. I'm going to wrap up. I know I've spoken for long. I hope that in my ramblings, I've been able to enlighten you as to a few things. Crime, especially gun crime, is not something that you can rule out overnight. You can't turn it around overnight. It didn't develop overnight. He didn't. I didn't even get to tell you, we didn't even get to talk about bail. You know, if Ryan would leave, then I could finish for the rest of the night. But I know you want to hear Ryan too. But you know about bail, that's a vexed question, and I've asked for a legal opinion on the current Bail Act, because right now it is known that a lot of people are granted bail, and those people who are granted bail come out and then find themselves charged with criminal offenses again.
Yes, exactly.
Now everybody has a right to freedom. There's a presumption of innocence. But let me share something with you, those of you who are Instagram people. So this is public knowledge because it's on Instagram. An individual was granted bail in Barbados recently. His bail had conditions attached. Conditions mean, well, there are any number of conditions, but one of those conditions was that he had to report to the station. That condition, he came back to court and applied to have that condition lifted so that he could go to Canada. He was allowed to go to Canada. And then not long after he arrives in Canada, there's a post on Instagram of that same young man at a firing range in Canada, firing high-powered weapons. Well, you know, if he was using air guns at an amusement park trying to win an elephant or a bear for your girlfriend, I wouldn't trouble myself. But the video has him with a gun that was letting out bullets. What kind of gun that would be? That ain't no packer, right? That would be a high, we all would call a high cyclic weapon. Okay, a high powered weapon, ejecting bullets, probably about, ejecting shells, not bullets. That would be great. They're probably about 2 inches long. That's where he got bail from Barbados to go on. This thing is serious. And our courts have to play a part too. And so I've asked for a legal opinion on the existing Bail Act to examine the constitutionality of restricting bail being given to individuals charged with certain offenses. And if, depending on what the opinion says, we may go back to Parliament to provide that if you're charged with certain kinds of offenses, firearm offenses of a certain kind, and homicides, that you will not be able to get bail for a period of time. Because these people need to be kept off of the streets in the interest of our society. Now, you will see that we're increasing the number of judges, because one of our other problems is that criminal cases are taking too long. There are murder cases. There's at least one that goes back to 2007. And you know, as a politician, I try to relate a lot of what I deal with to my own experiences. As a young boy, when I behaved bad, if my mother said you can get licks when your daddy get home, the pressure was off. Pressure was off because daddy didn't get home at 6:30. Pressure off. So he gone back again and they do the same thing. Pressure was off. On the other hand, if you get licks the same time, you're going to sit down and keep quiet. So when a person is charged with homicide in the year 2010, and we are now in 2019, and his trial has not come on yet, and he's out on bail, then pressure off. Pressure's off. You know, Carlisle Graves speaks to me often, and he said to me, you know, Dale, we had that problem in Bermuda. We had a problem in Bermuda. Cases taking long. But he says, when once we were able to get murder trials coming on within 6 months, the murder rate plummeted. Murder rate dropped. Plummeted. Because people began to understand that the consequences were following swiftly. And when you know that those consequences are following swiftly, then you take a different approach to how you conduct yourself in society. The criminal lawyers, the lawyers who practice criminal law, have been saying to me, the fellas have said, man, I can see you in 2 years. Meaning the charge with murder. And in 2 years' time, 18 months, they apply for bail and they come out on the streets. So they go up and breeze, and they come out in 2 years. So our courts have a role to play, and perhaps this is another discussion, but I'm not coming back because I don't like my introduction. So if I come back, it can be Ralph to introduce me. Comrade Hashim will do it. I'll come back when Ralph is over here. Because a discussion needs to be had on our court system as well. But remember I said crime is just a piece along the way. It starts somewhere and it ends somewhere. And our court system has to be more responsive, deal with criminal cases faster. We have 1,000 matters plus on indictment waiting for criminal trial. We have agreed to increase the number of criminal judges. We have agreed to give more prosecution staff, and we're going to take some steps to reduce the backlog. All of these are things that we're putting in place to make sure that the system begins to work. All of these things. And then we have to look at how DODS works, because DODS is like a higher institution for criminal activity. And I suppose we used to say it about Glenderry too, but we have to bring these things to an end. Ralph, members of your branch, parliamentary colleagues, I didn't welcome Ryan Straughn. In cabinet we call him Shylock. And, I see Comrade Walker. I see Comrade Walker on the outside. Let me thank you very much for your very kind invitation. Let me especially thank you for your graciousness, for your patience with my long rambling peroration. But I hope that I've been able to leave with you a few of the things that we are faced with, a few of the things that we've taken as responses, and I want to show you that we are on this particular job. We are on it. It's causing us sleepless nights. We've spent a lot of effort on the economy, and maybe this is the time now to tell us that we got to get focused on the social side of things. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that what I've left you with will prove to be useful and interesting.
Once again, good evening, comrades. I'd like to thank our Attorney General, Dale Marshall, for coming to Christchurch South this evening and giving us his report on what has happened in the last 6 months of the current administration. While I'm on my feet, I'd like to welcome to Christchurch South a man who we worked with. We were successful in some of that time, but a man who is highly respected in Barbados and who has a job that is a very difficult one. He is now Minister of Foreign Affairs and traveling all over this country, all over the world, trying to increase the presence of the Barbados and the Barbadian diaspora for the betterment of Barbados. Dr. Jerome Xavier Walker. I'd also like to take this time to remind you, and especially deal of our fish fight, Christchurch South Fish Fight, which will be held again at Keithville Apartments on Saturday, the 23rd of March. Last fish fight, George and Dale actually took us into the wee hours of the morning. And I hope that Dale would come along and bring his community as we took ours to St. Joseph, to what he spoke of last bank holiday, and we really had a great time up there, Dale. It was well organized. At this time, I'm going to ask I agree with my representative, and the meeting is packed to capacity. But at this time, we're going to take questions, a few questions after. I'd like to ask one of the longest standing members of the Barbados Labour Party, Hashim Dagan. We brought him from the city branch. He's now a full-fledged member of the Christchurch South branch, to come and to introduce our colleague, our friend, Minister. Yes, we recently honored Hashim for 50 years in the Barbados Labour Party. Not 50 years in Christchurch South, but 50 years in the Barbados Labour Party. And to come and to introduce the Minister in the office of the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Straughn, a good friend of mine. When Ryan first came to Christchurch, and he was first interested, I remember those early days in speaking and encouraging Ryan that he will have full support. But I'm going to give the honor to Hashim Dagan to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Before I begin, I'd like to apologize to Ralph and to Dale, to Comrade Dale and Ralph, because I put Ralph on the spot. Because I was told myself and Ralph to do the induction, so I asked Ralph who he wanted to introduce. Well, all he says, we will introduce Dale, because he's the heavy roller. And you were heavy roller. I introduced Ryan, not heavy roller. But, so, I just said, Dale, before this meeting started this evening, my wife ran me in a panic that there was no sun. Because one of the favourite ministers of the Barbados Labour Party to her is Mr. Dale Marshall. She followed him in the Archcock saga many years ago and was superbly impressed with the way he handled that situation. And to me that Dale Marshall is one of the most stable, solid rock ministers of the Barbados Labour Party ever had. She's a big fan of yours.
Introducing me again. He's doing what you didn't do.
Next time I hope I'm around, I will introduce you and see if Ralph and that handle. Now, Comrade Ryan Straughn. You know this word comrade, ladies and gentlemen. When I joined the Barbados Labour Party in 1968, and I first met my branch meeting in the city of Bridgetown, I remember this. The chairman said, comrades, let's welcome new member, Comrade Hashim Dagan. I said, my God, I joined the Communist Party. Because back in those days, if you remember the Communist Party, you were known as comrades. And all the white business men used to tell me straight up, oh, you're a Socialist Party, you're a Communist Party, you're a comrade, dear comrade. So anyhow, comrades, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce to you Comrade Ryan Straughn. Many years ago, a couple of years ago, I attended when I was representing the NEC, I attended an NEC meeting. And at that meeting, Mr. Ryan Straughn, who then was the president of the Economic Society, along with Alvis Prasad and Comrade Maskell, was there to advise the NEC and brief the NEC on the dire economic situation. And when this young man spoke, I was so impressed. I said in my mind, this man is the future Minister of Finance of the Barbados Labour Party. He was not a member of the party yet, I don't know. He was the president of the Economic Society at that time. I do not know if Comrade Motley had the SP and read my mind. Because a couple of months after I went to the meeting in Christchurch Central, where this was not Sans stepped down and Ryan Straughn was the candidate. I said, my gosh, you really got the SP this time. Ladies and gentlemen, and I've got to know Ryan Straughn, Comrade Ryan Straughn, just before election campaign, had a lot of conversation with him. And I remember telling the businessman who tackled me, you should make a hand. I said, don't about me, we got a team. And on that team was Conrad Maskell and Ryan Straughn, a bright young man. And every time I spoke to Ryan about the economy, he assured me confident, Hashim, we got this. Hashim, we got this. Hashim, we got this. And I was so confident he got it. I was telling every businessman on the island, we have this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it came true. Help me to welcome. Now, if Ryan Straughn saying he's Shylock, he ain't met Barbados yet. He was down Shylock. He was the cheapest man in the world. Because when he used to play poker in the South, he used to cut the pot. You're going to get away from Tom. He was cheap, cheap, cheap as a barfly. So, help me to welcome Comrade Ryan Straughn, Minister of Finance and Minister of Finance.
Good evening, everybody, comrades. Thanks very much for the introduction. I don't know, well, my apologies for my late arrival, first of all. I could listen to the Attorney General all evening, and I want to support his musings, as he put it, because as hard as we have worked over the last 9 months really to bring back a level of stability as far as the economy is concerned, the real battle is really for the heart and soul of Barbados. And inspiring young people again to understand that this country is worth fighting for is really why part of the reason it was late one is because we are in the process of preparing our estimates to be laid on Tuesday. We had a few technical hiccups with the system. And so that work is ongoing. But the reality is that as we saw throughout the campaign, when we canvassed not just Christchurch, but certainly the whole of Barbados, that this country needed to go in a completely different direction. And the people responded last May to indicate in no uncertain terms that they wanted to go in a different direction. And as we have been governing for the past 9 months, basically, we have sought at every stage to be consistent with that need to move in a different direction. And some of what the AG would have indicated to you is part of moving in that different direction. Because we've grown accustomed to doing things a certain way, and in very real terms, we've stood still. We've been marking time, not making the kind of progress that we were accustomed to making as a people. And certainly under these circumstances, financially, we have to make sure that as we spend money, we spend it in a manner that certainly you, as taxpayers, feel confident on the one hand, the government is spending your money in your interest, but two, that collectively, government will work with all the various stakeholders, because whilst money cannot solve all problems, the way that we engage stakeholders, communities, is much more important than what the overall number of fiscal deficit happens to be. Because at the end of the day, if we are not touching people, inspiring people, creating opportunities and a stable livelihood for people, then it really wouldn't matter how much money you spend. And so we have sought certainly to make sure that the discipline that you would expect from your government, that is there. And so I like to know that if we're going to spend your money, that we actually can get something back in return. And so I think my colleagues will affectionately refer to me as Shylock or cheap, because it is a demand that you, the citizen, would have placed on us to make sure that your money is spent responsibly. And it's difficult because we have inherited a space, a government where things did not work the way it should have worked, for many reasons. And a large part of that was because of a lack of leadership. And I can say to you that we have sought to make sure that at every level, we empower people once again to make decisions, to make recommendations, because it is important that, certainly as a minister, as an MP, that people are not afraid to say there's something wrong with this, and this is how we propose that it should be fixed. And as you know, as Barbadians, when we are angry, most times we don't say anything. And part of that behavior also has to change with us as a people, because we now have to, in a real sense, make sure that we voice our views in order to affect the change. Because if it's the one thing that the last 5 years would have taught us, we waited it out. Some of us kept some noise, some of us didn't. But the reality is that we did not, as a collective, in my view, move with urgency to make sure things did not deteriorate to the point to rate God. And I think that that's the one thing that we cannot, as a people, allow to happen again. And that's where we need to make sure that our young people appreciate that they're the ones who have to take up the mantle and, in a sense, fight the fight for Barbados. Now, the AG spoke about policing, for the most part, from what I heard. And certainly the modernization effort with respect to not just policing, but the way that government does its business. And I just want to speak very briefly on that. But before I do that, let me ask a simple question. How many persons in the room have heard of TAMIS? Show hands. TAMIS. Now that looks like less than a half. So, now I have to ask because obviously I'm responsible for finance, so I have to ask. But there's a new tax administration system. It's called TAMIS. It's the Tax Administration Management Information System. As you know, tax filing season is coming up. April is the normal tax filing time. And so there's a transition period between the old system and the new system. So you're required to register online. So you can go to bra.gov.bb and register online. And I would want to encourage each and every one of you, if you have not already registered, just simply go to the Barbados Revenue Authority's website, which is www.bra.gov.bb, and start the registration process. It's fairly straightforward. If there are any issues, there's a help desk number that you can call. But part of the modernization effort really is, as we said in our manifesto, one of the critical things, and the AG spoke to it about in his talk as it relates to accessing police certificate of character. We committed to making it easier for citizens to do business in this country. On the one hand with government, but we have taken the view that all business in general needs to be done easily. And currently, notwithstanding all of what we are doing with the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program, we are deep into, in a sense, the first phase of making sure that we modernize in full our entire payment system in Barbados. Now, the primary reason for that is that we want, as a government, for any citizen to pay anything, to pay for anything with government as easily as possible. The first phase we're going to be starting with is taxes, because those are simple to implement in the context that you have a new tax administration system. So therefore, it makes it easier then to make sure that citizens can pay their taxes easier. So we are deep into the conversation with respect to that. But at the same time, government wants to make sure that where it has to disburse monies or benefits, that it too can do so much easier than we are currently doing. Now, one of the critical things that we are conscious of isn't just from a perspective of that ease of doing business, but as you are well aware, we have some issues certainly within our court system with respect to the payment of maintenance and the social issues that attend to that. And we believe certainly that technology is a clear solution to be able to deal with that. And so to the extent that this modernization effort is focused not just on the ease of doing business, but certainly providing a shield for those women who have to go to the magistrate's court to get maintenance, that the technology provides a solution that allows for a level of dignity to attend to that process. And so it is truly transformational, because it means that as we work through the myriad of benefits that certainly government would discharge, that can be done much easier. But over the next 2 years or so, we intend to make sure that Barbados is as cashless and checkless as possible, but that there are myriad of ways that not just citizens can engage with government, but you should be able to do your business with any entity, whether it's a small business, large business, person to person. That the ease with which persons can conduct their own personal business now has to be part of the new way of doing things. Now, I know some of us like to stand in line and get a physical receipt. There's nothing wrong with that. But that costs money to do, because what we have to do in the sense of what the AG would have raised in terms of the deployment of policemen. You want policemen to be policing, not doing administrative stuff. And so to the extent that we are seeking to change the processes within government, what we are trying to do essentially is to reduce the number of persons that we have to deploy to collect money and to discharge receipts, and put them in areas where whatever the service that the department is offering, that they can help support and deliver better. And that is where a lot of the transformation and certainly the change in culture in our minds now have to come along. Because you should only really have to go to a government department if there's a real problem. Think about it. We are in the process of making sure that we make it as easy as possible for you to get information on the one hand, so that public servants, at the time that public servants will spend on a daily basis, should be on providing the service, not necessarily answering queries. Now, it means a slightly different way of interacting, which we are intending to obviously make sure that that is rolled out. But the reality is, a lot of what we have grown accustomed to costs money. It is time consuming. And as you know, the old adage, time is money. And how public servants spend time is critical to how you, the citizen, will want, feel about your government and what your government is delivering for you. And that is why we are in this process, literally, of making sure that we can make it as easy as possible for people to do business. Now, the overriding objective really is, from our perspective, is that you ought to be able to engage government at a single point. So if you happen to be paying the school fees at a secondary school for your grandchild or your child, that you should also be able, for example, to pay for your driver's license if you want to interact in that way. So that you don't have to leave the school and go to the bank or wherever. And that means integrating our systems such that if you actually happen or have to go to meet, to do business with someone in person, that you should be able to engage government at that point, irrespective of what that point happens to be. whether it's the post office, the school, wherever. And so our systems now have to be integrated such that you, the citizen, here, you could go to the post office and all these things and do whatever with government if you wish. Or on your iPad or your mobile phone, you do the same. Because we accept that there are some people obviously who will take to the technology much faster, but we also accept that there are persons who actually still want to engage with a human being. And so we are trying to make sure that as we modernize government, that we make sure that all of our systems are capable of communication and talking to each other, such that when you go to a point of government, that you should be able to access the full services of government. So that your time, you don't have to spend time going from one department to the next department to the next department just to pay government. You should be able to do that at one point. Now that takes time to roll through. And so that is really where we are trying to make sure that the full services that government can offer, that we integrate it in such a fashion that it makes your lives a lot easier. The reality is this: I really don't like stand up in lines. I don't know if you do. Some people might see it as a social event. Sometimes you get to complain and cuss the people that provide the service, and I know it becomes, it's soothing because you're suffering together. And the reality is, I want you to spend your time doing something that you really want to do. Something rather than in a government office waiting to pay for something. If you have to go to a government office, it really should be because there is a real problem that you need to get solved. So that the time, as I said, is for the public servants to spend troubleshooting as opposed to administering. And that's why we are on this very strong modernization effort, because time is money, and your time is valuable to you. And that is a critical part of how we now have to re-engineer our minds about how we spend our time. Now, we have just on Friday, as you know, we're in the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program. The IMF team would have been here on last Tuesday. They left on Friday. And we are on target. As a matter of fact, we have already had the second disbursement with respect to the funds from the IMF. And so we have worked really hard to make sure that we can give you, the citizen, the confidence that this plan is working. Now, some persons would have been laid off. That's unfortunate. But we are working to make sure that the opportunities that we said that we were going to provide, that we will actually provide. Now, the critical thing that I want to emphasize is, as we move through this, the confidence not just that you as a citizen will have, but certainly businesses and investors will be critical to creating the conditions for better and greater and even more inclusive growth for the economy. But unlike the 7, 8, 9, 10 or however many plans that the previous government had, what you will hear quarter after quarter after quarter as we go through what we say we were going to do, and we are in fact doing, and we are communicating to you what has been done, who will be affected, how we plan to mitigate against it. As those things happen, the report of the IMF represents that objective assessment of the success of the program. So we're not going to come back at some point and say, well, this is BERT 2.0. This is BERT. This is the plan that will take us through to where we need to get to. And as we go through this process, as the reports come in, we've met our targets, we've met our targets, we've met our targets, we've met our targets. That now becomes psychologically a serious and significant enhancement to the way that Barbadians now start to feel about how this place is being managed. As you're aware, we've already received some upgrades from the rating agencies with respect to what we did with respect to the debt restructuring. That is another signal that you're moving in the right direction. Because in the past, all we were going was down. Now we are seeking to rebuild this economy and make sure that we lift up each and every citizen in this country. This year, 2019, is a serious year. Not just for the economy, but as the AG said, it is a year where we have to take back the society. We have to take back the society. And in as much as we are doing what we have to do on the economic side, it really now relies on all of us to make sure that we get out there and engage in every corner of this country, as we did during the campaign. And we have to encourage people to get involved in productive programs, young or old, and just spend time in communities, making sure that we can stem the tide with respect to providing not just hope, but opportunities for young people to see a brighter future. And over the course of the coming weeks, as we go through this process with respect to the estimates, to put resources where we believe they should go to help boost that effort, the reality is that the most important thing that we as citizens can do for ourselves is to encourage people to get into the communities, engage families, engage individuals, and spend serious quality time with young people. It is invaluable. There's no amount of money that the government could possibly raise or even pay that will substitute for that time that we all must spend in each of our communities. And it is something that we are committed to doing as a government, because in as much as we are busy managing the economy, this is much more important for this year, because as I said at the very beginning, young people must see Barbados as worth fighting for. And that, I think, of all the things that we will do in terms of repairing Barbados, as we said in our manifesto, getting young people to join the fight, literally, to save this country, I think has to be the mission of our lifetime. Having said all of that, as we meet on a weekly basis to discuss how we are going to roll out government's program, I think certainly as a party, we have to be mindful that we are since independence, I would have to say this is the first time that we have had, in a real sense, to govern for everybody. In the past, you would have won 20 seats, and you would have focused on, the people. And the other side did the same thing, and the Barbados Labour Party in this circumstance has to govern for everybody. Without doubt, even St. Michael West. Even St. Michael West. We have to govern for everybody. And governing for everyone is difficult. Not that governments in the past did not govern, but I'm saying given the resources that we have available to us now, governing for everybody is extremely, extremely difficult. And certainly, as we seek to get this economy going with a matter of urgency, we are committed to try to make sure we can get our tax dollars to spread as far and wide as possible. And for some, that means that what you would normally see happen in the past cannot attain today's situation. Cannot. And we now have to make sure that strategically that we put this country back on a path that includes everybody. And I believe that once we're able to do that successfully, that this country will be better off for it. Because a government that truly looks at the bigger picture, in my view, rather than, I mean, there may be specific issues that are long-standing in various communities across the country, which by nature would have to be dealt with in a special case, if you like. But governing for the country now is critical, absolutely critical. And I cannot emphasize how important that is, because how we decide to spend money and where is going to be curious, because we have grown accustomed to seeing things happening in the areas that we want. But we are the government. We want everything. And so therefore we have to be mindful that as government executes its program, that is consistent with that mandate. But certainly Christchurch South is where we are today. You would have seen certain things happen in the past, and we know it. Things would, certain roads would get done because of those things, and that's what we tolerated as a country. Right now, we're going to try to make sure we can fix all the roads that we could possibly fix. There's no there's no distinction. So you can't stop a road that started prior to the election because you want everything. In the past, the work would have stopped and you would have moved to another constituency. You can't do that now. And so this is part of the change. The change. I'm not sure that people realize that is a critical thing, because it means that monies that were already committed, you don't just divert to do other things. Now, we have priorities certainly, and our road situation needs to be addressed. Our South Coast sewage has been addressed, and I want to say we have, and that is not cheap. I can tell you that. but certainly, I think. Well, I don't know if you're going to have. I think they're having a meeting here next week. But I certainly believe that certainly as part of Christchurch South, where a lot of the network infrastructure for the South Coast would be, that certainly your constituents, Ralph, and the businesses there will breathe much easier, literally, figuratively, because this government put the resources behind it, led by the Honourable Wilfred Abrams, to make sure that problem is resolved. Now, I raise that because as a government, in a very stressed circumstance, you have to make decisions about how you're going to solve problems. It's expensive. I can tell you it's expensive. Persons are paying the garbage and sewage contribution. Some people are hooked up to the sewage system, some are not. But sewage flowing on the street, whether it is in Hastings or Worthing, affects everybody in Barbados. And so we introduced the GSC as a means to help solve that problem. I believe citizens have seen progress as far as that is concerned. It is not the final solution, but we have made sure that certainly your residents, your constituents, Ralph, will know that their government has been working in their interests. And whilst many of the citizens in this country are not directly, and I say directly only because they don't live there, they would have contributed to the solution to the problem by helping to pay to offset some of the expenditures associated with the problem. And that's what you do as a government, certainly as a neighborhood. If your neighbor in trouble, you will help them. And whilst the GSC may not have been, would have been the most popular decision we had to govern this country. And there are consequences for leaving things unattended. And that is not how we do things. And I am truly, truly proud to say that Christchurch certainly has led the way with respect to solving this problem. Because I can say to you that Minister Abrams has set about that task with a certain venom, yeah?
That is so true.
A certain venom. That, seriously, a certain venom. Week after week, the AG would tell you, Minister Husbands would tell you, he would come to cabinet and he would report progress or setbacks or progress and setbacks. And I'm looking at the money. But the reality is that you have to understand, as I think quite rightly the Prime Minister says, you don't let money make you a fool. The problem has to be solved. It has to be fixed. And in that, as part of that decision making means that you have to do things that you wouldn't do under normal circumstances. And I hope that now that there's been a solution brought to bear, that as we seek to put in place what would be the permanent solution, not just for the South Coast, to Bridgetown as well, that people will recognize the difference between this government and anything that went before. There's a difference. There's a difference. And we are not in any way scared to communicate that this has not been easy. It has been tough because we've had, and I mean, whilst Minister Abrams was not responsible for the for the problem, he took the responsibility for solving it. And certainly as a cabinet, as you would have us do, we asked questions, we brought in the people, we asked the technical people, we demanded answers from them as to why this thing has not been solved. Because accountability means that as you elect us, we must hold those who are charged with the responsibility of executing on your behalf to question, to probe, to understand what are the issues and how we as the decision makers can assist in solving the problem. That is how a government governs. And all I can say to you is this has been a very interesting 9 months. It has been very interesting because we've seen, I think, the best in all Barbadians in the last 9 months. We have seen the best in Barbados in the last 9 months. There have been times where people didn't agree with certain things, but the reality is that we've seen the best of Barbadians in the last 9 months. And I want to say to you that for the remainder of certainly this year, we need that momentum to continue. There's no time at all for complacency in this effort, at all. And I will say, anytime you start to feel comfortable, I want you to pinch yourself, because we are still in a hole. We are still in the hole, we're getting out of the hole, but we're not out yet. We're not out yet. And so therefore it means that we must make sure that we help each other, help each community, each family, each constituency, the country. And at times we may even need to help our neighbors, because things are happening in this world that threatens our stability in the region. Yeah? And certainly you would be aware that Barbados being an island, we rely on foreign direct investment. We rely on stability in the region, because this is a region of peace for the most part, and we must do whatever it takes to make sure that our peace remains so for some time. And notwithstanding all that's happening globally, we have to make sure that we are friends of all and satellites of none. And I say that proudly because we have now before us a serious challenge, serious challenge. And I think for young people, it will define for young people what Barbados has always been. Barbados has always been a leader, has always been a leader in this world. And as we go about transforming Barbados again, we will lead. We have to lead. Because without that leadership, in my view, not just that we suffer, but our neighbors also suffer. We've always had the capacity to do things with the region, and we need to embrace that much more. But our leadership, I believe, is critical, because we have always had, I believe, yes, we have always had great leaders. A slight blip, but you get the point. We lead, and you know the absence, you know the impact of Barbados not leading, and we don't want to go back down that road again. We lead. And so with the geopolitics for 2019, things may get a little dicey, but I want you to appreciate that your government is working hard on all fronts. Economically, from a foreign policy standpoint, certainly from a legal affairs standpoint, youth and community standpoint, education, health, as we seek to weave all of these strands of this fabric of Barbados back together. Your government is working on your behalf. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this is our fight. It really is. And I am happy to say that I am serving with some people who are committed to the cause. Committed to the cause. And certainly Ralph is there every step of the way. Yeah? Every step of the way. And Ralph is no less how should I put it? Adamant about his representation for Christchurch South than any cabinet member. And I think as we move forward, certainly as a party and as a country, that the fortunes, I think, of the Barbados Labour Party and how we conduct ourselves in government will always define, in my mind, the fortunes of Barbados. And I'm saying I'm proud to serve with Ralph, and I want to thank you for inviting me here this evening. Minister Husbands, the AG, we have all been working hard to make sure that not just the citizens of Christchurch South, but certainly the citizens of Barbados can feel proud to know that it's government. And certainly Minister Walker, who's here, who has been not short of time lag and jet lag, seriously representing the interests of Barbados, because whilst one may not necessarily understand how foreign policy influences your domestic policy, and being able to carve out a space for yourself in this world is a challenge. And I would want to say to you that yes, whilst Minister Walker is was your former representative, that he too is working on behalf of Christchurch South and certainly the rest of Barbados, because in this fight we really have to make sure that we utilize all of our available resources. And I'll end where I started. We have to get young people engaged. There are some young people who you can say, Saturday morning, go there, and they will respond. There are others that you have to literally go on Saturday morning, get them, make sure to bed, and get wherever they're supposed to get to. And so you have two ends of the spectrum. The reality is that we have to make sure that every young person that you engage with, that as we seek to roll out the many programs that will be rolled out over the coming months and certainly years, that we stay committed to that cause. So if you have to go and get them, go and get them. Because I believe that show of interest is perhaps the simplest thing that we can do for our young people. Show interest in their well-being, and they will show interest in the well-being of Barbados. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thanks very much.
Comrades, we would have heard from our AG and our minister in the Ministry of Finance. And I want to start the ball rolling by saying to the Minister Straughn, while the estimates are around the corner, and both persons here this afternoon spoke about the youth. But I want to say to the Minister Straughn, that, and I want to be the advocate, that I'm tired of listening to people and people not paying attention to what is real and what has to be done. And I'm speaking about agriculture. And I hope that when Minister Straughn and others go to the estimate meetings, that agriculture must be on the forefront of those talks. And that we must understand that if we really supplement agriculture, we can reduce the half budget, just like Jamaica did. That if you give to agriculture, that you can employ the people, the young people in this country. And there's a feed program that the government is setting up. I believe it hasn't passed cabinet, but it's something that is going to encourage the land for the landless, for the youth, which will teach them skills and whatnot. But I want some more money and some more help for a better lifestyle for Barbadians. It is not good to have chronic disease at 40–45%, Jerome will tell you. And our neighbors live better lifestyles because what they grow and what they eat. And therefore, I beg of you, sir, to think agriculture as well. That's an industry that can employ people. And certainly is an industry that the youth need to be very versed and very skilled in. We need to put those lands into production. Minister Humphrey would be responsible for the blue economy. And when you look at what is happening, there are Barbadian fishermen who are selling tuna to China and all parts of the world for $16 a pound. And we need to train, and some of them are already past the hill, and we need to train the youth to understand the navigation and going out there and making that money and be self-employed. So I hope that agriculture is on the forefront, and that we are, and for that is why we're going to really push AgriFest from now on and going forward. But I want to open the floor for some questions to Ryan and Dale. So if you have any questions I'll start with Dale first. He spoke about crime and violence. We have Heather Higgs.
Yeah. Yes, Minister Marshall, I heard you spoke about the police and stuff like that, interacting with people. I must say to you that I generally work very closely with the police on an everyday basis on the beach. I work very closely with the police on an everyday basis on the beach. And I can say some of those policemen that are out there now with full uniform, it made a big difference on those beaches out there now, along with some of the defense force. Because before you would have seen a lot of like wildlife that running on the beaches and things. I mean, these people here, and I call them wildlife because I can get them controlled. So somebody kind of come and help me control them. Right, but seeing that, I must compliment you all so far for what your ministry and the whole government have been doing in one. That is one part. The other question to you as well is, I heard you spoke about the time you have to spend for a police certificate character. I, for one person, I think, and that's only my thinking, that I think instead of being just a police certificate character for just 6 months, you know, I think y'all can at least put it at least for a year. Because sometimes you might go for a police certificate character. I saw a guy before, only his certificate character was only expired 1 day before he was due to go to get his security license. And they told him that he would have to go and get a fresh certificate of character all over again. So I'm just saying that I think that, I'm just asking that question, that I will hope that it can go at least for a year. And the time span, as you say, I hope that it will be a lot sooner than before.
Thank you. You know, there's some countries in the world that don't issue police certificates of character at all. And they operate on a different basis. If you have reason to believe that a person is guilty of an offense or was guilty of an offense, then you has a conviction, then you have to, the authority has to prove it rather than the individual proving that he's never been convicted. All across the region, we still have the certificates of character. I think if we reduce the turnaround time, it will help that particular problem, because the truth is, it could still expire a day before if it's a year.
Yes,
if it's 10 years, it could still expire a day before. So I think the key really isn't extending it, because there's always a risk to that in between that time the person can find themselves convicted. The key will be to have a rapid turnaround. In relation to, I don't call them my boys. When Alpha called, could call me that. Bunch of my boys. And remarkably, he was right. But there's we have a challenge on both sides, because it is regrettable that people tend not to respect the authority of wardens like yourself.
Yeah.
But when you say you then have to call the police. The difficulty that you find is that for members of the regular constabulary to do that kind of duty, you know, it's frustrating. It doesn't fit the aspirations and all kinds of stuff. We committed in our manifesto to look at special constables and island constables, and I think that we need, especially taking into account the deficit in policing, we need to retool our island constables and repackage them and give them better training and so on, so that we might not necessarily need to have to call on police to do that particular task, but we would be able to draw on the resources of the people who support the Royal Barbados Police Force, especially the island constables. They do a remarkable job. They've not been treated well in the past. They don't get the sick days. I don't think they get vacation, all that kind of stuff. But it really means that we have to put additional resources of a support kind to help you to manage your job better. It's a little bit unfair to expect wardens from NCC to be having to behave as if they're police for the beaches. That's not your training, and with due respect to what I think you're expected to do, I think is a little bit unfair. And we need to put some more effort behind it, but I think the solution will be not necessarily police, but more interventions by island constables. I think they can fill that role quite well.
Hashim. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Mr. Minister, two questions I'd like to ask. One with immigration and one with the court. The first one with the court. I know right now, it is worrying me, he is not my son, but this guy had a child from a young lady. This guy do everything for this child. This, not that even in this waters, this father will bring this child to carry school every Sunday. It was a problem every time this boy come for the child on Friday evenings. It was a problem. Sometimes police had to intervene. The boy decided to go and speak to a lawyer to get more information to get his child upon this Friday evenings. On weekends, as we said. But what bringing it about, this young girl said, look at the father, because he is a young man with something in him. Because when I examined him and he was working and he get laid off, and when he get laid off, he had a car, and he sold the car. So one of his saying, he said, mommy, I sell the car. So I said, why you sell the car? He said, because I have a child, and I have the mother, and I have a few cents, but you know, mommy, sickness and things take money. And I sell my car so that if anything happened, I would have money to deal with my child. Now this girl, she want to move on in life. So she decided now she want to move on. This guy waited on her nearly over a year and a half to say if she would change her money because he really loves her and the child. After this guy began to speak to another lady now, this is when his problem starts. She don't want him, she want to do what she like, but she don't want him to think because she want him to be like, they call us stupid, Your Honor, excuse my language, and he is to deal with that. So the boy decided to go and see a lawyer to be able to advise him so that he'll be able to get his choice that bring him confusion all the time. Anyhow, her other half of the family, the guy get to bed to get the lawyer, like sending all the lawyer, to bring the bail to bring to go to court, and they went to the court. This lady, family, when they get a lawyer too, and they give the boy when they went to court, now they let him get the first opportunity for the lawyer to address the situation, and the magistrate. And let the boy lawyer say nothing. Because from the time they get in the court, her lawyer speak. And you know what the court do with that boy? The magistrate turn and tell the boy, try to explain, and they want to hear him say this is by the court, by the case. But the magistrate put $400 on that boy a month. She now get this $400. I don't know what she's doing with it. I don't know what she's doing with it before, but what hurts me with this situation is to see you went court and put it back, you went again to put it back. You understand? So I would like the order to look at, especially with these men, with these children, because there's a lot of unfairness going on with these men, with these children at court. Fight for that for me, for that boy, because it's really like it's still getting some, you know, because it is hurting. He is hurting. And the next question was with immigration. A lady talked to me a time ago, consistent a passport. She's in my age group. We don't know about the computers. I got a phone and if you call me, can I answer? They can make a call, but don't want to send an expert. Anyhow, she asked me what to do, so I tell her to go down in our things and got a computer place down there to do certain things on computer. I mean to say that I explain to this lady and tell her, well, when you come and get an access birth certificate, an access this, they've got certain things right on the form, tell you on the computer what to do on the form, and when you get there, you got to come back outside now and go some place to photocopy and do different documents. I don't feel that is right. Put the cards on the table so that when people come, you know what everything done passed. I was in Boston at the time, and I had a grandson down there, and his passport was expired. He was in school up there. And I went up to New York to this hotel, and I had that passport in one day. I had that passport the same day. I get up Manhattan around 9:30, 9:45, and went home. I had that passport to go back down to Boston. I feel the need to come up to Tamar, so do something for me. Not for me, because my passport, I'm not going to worry anything anymore.
Thank you. Hashim?
Oh. No, go ahead, Hashim.
Hashim?
I just got one question related to your statement for agriculture. I mean, the Honorable Third Judge fought at left on crime. But we have one chronic disease in this country that cannot be solved with Mr. Head, and be solved with the Attorney General. It's called thieving. Thieving in the agriculture industry. Banned on 3 year hours. It's a massive problem. I got friends in agriculture. What way with me in tears? You got a whole crop. Now the harvest next one, already harvested. Not my monkeys. And he went in tears. I mean, it's happening all the time every day. I was right out of the country one day, I was passing, I saw my spotlight hit a Suzuki van in the cane field, and they were reaping crops. My first action was passing every day. Yeah, at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, the Suzuki van in the fields carrying people crops. It's a chronic disease in this country. We will not be able to have agricultural produce to supply this country if that chronic disease is called thieving in our agriculture country. So, Mr. Marks, I should talk about how we can deal with that.
Well, let me start with the one lady who asked about the system in courts and also immigration. There's always some instance that people can relate where things happen in a court that perhaps don't seem quite right. I wasn't there, nor were you, so I try not to form a clear judgment about that. I mean, I've been in court and I've seen judges tell the other side, I don't want to hear you. And it is generally unfair. But there are also times when the court does it in good cause. So it's difficult to come down on one side or the other, but I'll say this. When the system does not appear to work fairly, people lose faith in it. And there's a gentleman who comments every day on Facebook about difficulties that he's having. I don't remember his name, but he's involved in the environment. He posts, I don't remember his name, but he posts almost every day about issues that he has in relation to getting access to his child. He frequently I think it broke my heart when one day he said he had to call the police on a Christmas day in order to be able to have access to give the child a gift. Now, whether that's true or not, there's always more than one side to the story. But here's what I will say. Every magistrate, every judge has a duty to be fair. And part of being fair is giving each side an opportunity to say his case. So I would be very concerned if a case is being conducted in a situation where it appears to be unfair. I regret that I probably, it's not something that I could look into. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, sir, and talking on fair case, I am talking about how the magistrates prolong the case.
Oh, okay, so
back the case, and when they want to put in back the cases all the time.
yeah.
So I mean, it's something they could do to bring up these cases. And I heard that they all bring in more magistrates, and if they took, especially a case that had lingering so long.
Part of our, well, let me focus on that then. This is really the issue of how long it takes to get these matters done, and adjournments and so on. And adjournments are in nobody's interest. And I've been saying repeatedly, I've had meetings with Chief Justice, and so the Chief Justice, our judges have the power to sanction lawyers who cause delay. And I speak as a lawyer now, Ralph would probably agree, rarely do clients, sometimes they do, but rarely do clients cause delay in the matter going ahead. It's often the lawyer, because he's in another court, he ain't ready, he went to crop over facts, and they get around doing the paperwork. These things happen, okay? But in our rules of the Supreme Court and in the court's inherent jurisdiction, High Court, that is not Magistrates Court, the High Court has the power to impose a cost order on lawyers who, in their view, have not discharged their duty responsibly and caused the court to waste time. And I support that strongly whenever lawyers fault. Sometimes there are reasonable instances. I mean, if Ralph is involved in 10 cases at one time, then maybe something will slip, but not to constantly be causing adjournments. The court will give an adjournment, but if a judge sees it happening, happening with too much regularity, he has in his arsenal of sanctions, he has the power to sanction the lawyer. And I believe that if a few lawyers got some cost orders imposed on them, and the cost order will be this: you have to pay the other side for the delay, and they got to come out of your pocket. You can't charge the client. If they start to feel it in their pocket, they will, buck up, as they say. But we have systemic challenges. Family matters take up 30% of the High Court's time. 30% of the High Court's time. Now, we have pledged to Barbados in our manifesto and in our commitments to the country to establish a dedicated family court. A dedicated family court, and we haven't finalized how it will look yet, but we're hoping to have it in place by the end of the coming financial year. We believe that by having specialist trained judges dealing with family matters, we will get rid of some of this delay. Right now, any judge will do a family matter, any judge. But some judges, family matters are not their specialty. I don't want to say not interested, because they do have to do matters before them, but it's like a brain surgeon. Any point need a GP to get brain surgery, he might know which end of your body your brain on, but not much more than that. And we feel that when we have a specialized court with specialized people doing those kinds of matters, we will see them move through a lot faster in the system. And if I can draw another analogy on medicine, and Dr. Jerome is here, he would tell you that the reason a surgeon in the States might be more proficient in the surgery isn't that he's better trained, is that when a doctor here will only do 10, he might do 200. So by virtue of doing more and more, you become more and more proficient. So if we have specialized family law judges, that's what they're doing every day, then we believe that we will see things moving through the system faster. But I have to say this as well. Sometimes things go to court that don't need to be in court. They don't need to be in court. But, people take positions and everybody get vexed and they won't agree, and you know, and it's important, therefore, that. So what happens is you go before a judge. Unnecessary, waste time. We are slowly but surely implementing a system of mediation, and we hope to employ that mediation in the family setting as well. So that instead of having a dispute and going before the court and arguing, a fellow like Hashim would draw, I'm not calling Nancy name again, but somebody like Hashim who's trained as a mediator will bring two parties around the table and try to get them to a place where, you know, you don't need a judge for that. And all across the world, mediation, in some jurisdictions, whenever a matter is filed in the High Court, it must go to mediation. The parties must be in mediation for up to 3 hours. And some jurisdictions have reported that they've been able to get rid of 25–30% of court cases going forward because of mediation. And we think that by imposing mediation on many of those family matters, you bring the people together to sit down and try and work through. Sometimes, especially in family matters, it's just anger and bitterness. That's all, anger and bitterness. Because if you can afford $400 and $400 is what it takes to maintain the child, that's not going to change. But you know what? Instead of saying, all right, I can give $400, he vexed because she got another boyfriend.
No, but Mr. Minister, and in that, you know, he the only carrier there, so that the magistrate can allow him to get custody of the child.
Well,
but they're bringing them lawyer talk.
Well, but everybody is entitled to do that. You know? Everybody's entitled to do that. On relation to immigration, my parents are. I don't know if they're watching, I hope not, because I'm about to say that they're elderly. But you know, more and more of the things, more and more of the relationship with citizens will be moving towards what we call electronic or digital platforms. Now, it worries me, not just for myself, but because you know, my mom's, you know, when you travel now, you don't necessarily go to a check-in counter anymore. You go to a kiosk and you put the passport on, and you know, my wonderful mother's hand shakes. Well, that's, I mean, you know, your hand shake. And I don't travel with them, but I can imagine that's something as simple as that, you know, being able to do something as simple as that. I mean, in travel, but what I'm saying is that as we run towards embracing technology, we have to remember that there are constituents of ours who, like the day lady there, could manage to use a phone, but for no other reason, nothing else. And so we run the risk of creating a society that's digital, but we will leave out a whole older generation and a whole cadre of people who don't have access to these things because of the dollars. And no government, you know, we always said where no one is left behind. That was on the Barbados Manifesto logo for generations. So we have to make sure that even in things like immigration, that if you are not computer literate, that you should not be made to feel that you can't get a passport because they say you have to apply online. We have to make sure that we do it in the school, whether we do it in the public library, whether we do it in the post office, that all services have to be available to the elderly, to the ones who are having ill health, to the ones who are sight poor, to the ones who don't have the money to have a computer at home, and sometimes they have a computer but no internet access. Okay, we cannot have a truly inclusive society that leaves out masses of people. So I can promise you that we're working towards that. For example, the TAMIS project, which is the tax administration, something or another. Your new tax number. The Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology has just embarked on a project where they will not quite hire, but engage, I think it's about 100 or maybe 200 students at the university and high schools to go around to libraries and places and so on to help people who can come and say, I'm having difficulty registering, can you help me please? And there are people who will do that if the facility is afforded to them. So we have to be receptive. As for pre-deal larceny, the last administration passed a piece of legislation that we're not happy with. And my ministry, I am working closely with Myriad to try to see how we can come up with a piece of legislation that's sensible and that works for us. We had difficulties with the bill that they brought, the Democratic Party brought, with saying that they were protecting farmers. We were concerned that they were more criminalizing people and putting all kinds of loopholes in the system and then creating a lot of obstacles for people doing business. But farming will not be viable if farmers are not protected, and we are committed to offering and providing all protection possible.
Yeah. We take